Hey everyone! So today's tutorial is going to be cake donuts. It's something a lot of you have been requesting and asking me for, so finally today we're going to do it. And we're going to be making chocolate cake donuts for this one. Now the chocolate batter that we're going to be making, we're actually going to use for 2 more tutorials. So keep this recipe on hand. It's my own recipe. I use it for everything and I think you're really going to enjoy. Another thing I want to mention before we get started is a lot of you have been asking me for Easter treats and that kind of thing. So for today's cake donuts, we're going to be doing half as we would normally decorate them and the other half in an Easter theme. We are going to be making chocolate cake donuts, and we're also going to use this chocolate batter for our cupcakes and a cake later this week. So make sure you watch this and get it all down pat. We add our oil and our sugar to the mixing bowl and let them whip until they're nice and light and fluffy. Once that's done, about 2 minutes, we're going to add our eggs and let that whip for about 5 minutes along with our vanilla. Once it's really light and fluffy, I prepare my cocoa and water mixture, which is going to be our liquid ingredients, and I prepare my flour, baking soda, baking powder, and salt. These are going to be in separate bowls because we're going to be adding half of our dry ingredients, pulsing it in, half of our wet ingredients, pulsing it in, the other half of our dry ingredients, pulsing it in, and then the remainder of our wet ingredients and pulsing them in. This might seem like a tedious process, but it helps all of the ingredients mix in evenly, and it also makes sure that you don't overmix your batter. When I say pulse it in, I just mean turning the knob quickly on and off so that you're mixing it but not letting the mixer stay on. It's important that we do this because we don't want the batter to get really tough. And if you just let it mix and just let it keep going, you're going to develop a lot of gluten from your flour, which means the cake won't be light and moist and fluffy when you're finished. Once you've finished adding all of your ingredients into your bowl and pulsing them in, you can take the bowl off of the mixer and do a final mix by hand. This allows you to get any flour, sugar, anything that's been stuck at the sides or the bottom of the bowl, and make sure it's all mixed in evenly. For these cake donuts, I am using a cake donut pan. If you don't have one, you can create one just using a little bit of tin foil in a mini cupcake pan. I spray my pan with some nonstick spray and then add about half of a mini scoop of batter to each little donut section in the pan. If you don't have a mini scoop, you can also use a piping bag or Ziploc bag to pipe your batter into each section. It might be a little cleaner for you. It's totally up to you, whatever you prefer. I bake them for 10 minutes and then flip them out of the pan. If they're a little stuck, you can just loosen them by hand. And then I put them onto a cooling rack for about 5 minutes while I work on my glaze. This glaze is going to be the one that we are dunking our entire donut into, so we want to make sure that it's as smooth as possible. We're going to use sifted icing sugar, hot water, a little bit of milk, lemon juice, and salt. We could just make this with icing sugar and water, but it will be very sweet, so we use the salt and the acid to help balance that out. Once it's completely smooth, you can start to dunk your cooled donuts into the glaze. You want to make sure that they are entirely coated in this glaze. If you miss a spot, you can just take your finger and go back over it. And you do want to put a drip tray underneath your rack because a lot of this glaze will drip off onto the bottom of the tray. Now you want to let that glaze set until it's hard to the touch. So while it's setting, you can work on your buttercream, which is what we're going to use for the top. Now you could dip these donuts into anything. You could dip them into the ganache we made last week. You can dip them into chocolate. But for these guys, because we're going to do a few that are Easter themed, we want to do something that we can tint, and we're going to use American buttercream for that. To make our American buttercream, we're going to add butter, salt, and vanilla to a bowl and let it whip on high for about 5 to 7 minutes. Now the reason we do this is to let the butter get lighter in color as well as getting light and fluffy itself. This takes away some of the oily texture that you can sometimes find in buttercreams. Once it's light and fluffy, we can add in our sifted icing sugar on low at first until it's all combined, and then turn it up to high. You'll see that the buttercream will turn from a pale yellow to closer to an off-white color, and that's exactly what you're looking for. Once your buttercream is made, you can tint it to whatever colors you'd like to do. For these donuts, we're going to be doing a pink buttercream, a yellow buttercream, and a brown buttercream. Now, when we're making donuts, I actually melt the buttercream and dip them as you would dip a normal donut. So when you're melting your buttercream, you're just going to pop it into the microwave 5 seconds at a time and then stir. Once it's loose but not separated, that's when you know it's ready to work with. You're going to dip each donut into the melted buttercream and you want to work quickly. Once you dip it in, give it a shake right side up, and that'll even out any unsightly lumps or bumps that you may have. For these first ones, we are just going to use some Easter-themed sprinkles from Sweet Polita. But if you're doing regular donuts and it's not just for Easter, you can use any sprinkles you want, or you can drizzle the donuts with more of our melted buttercream, or some of the ganache, or even some of the salted caramel that we made last week as well. Really, your options are endless when it comes to these donuts. You can do whatever flavors you want. You can tint your buttercream. It's really kind of just open to your creativity. For the next batch, we're going to be doing our yellow melted buttercream, and then I'm going to be sprinkling on some of the pastel bit chips from Sweet Polita. These are just little colored chocolate bits. So these are great for spring, great for Easter, but if you have other sprinkles that you would prefer, definitely use those here to fit your theme. For our final set of donuts, I'm going to be using a grass tip and some brown buttercream. For the brown buttercream, I just tinted it with a little bit of cocoa powder, so it's actually chocolate flavored. And I'm just going to be making little swirls. Now, the reason I'm doing this rather than dipping them is because I want to give it the look of a little nest, because we're going to be adding mini eggs into each little nest donut. If you don't have a grass tip, that's no problem at all. You can create a similar effect by cutting a small hole in the corner of a Ziploc bag and piping your frosting by going around and around and around and around until you have a similar look. I hope you guys enjoyed our donut tutorial, and if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. Thanks, guys!